Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's live stream. I am doing this to answer a question that I get sometimes, or actually, more often, what I get is people explain that they are buying a mineral because their goats eat it. And in fact, somebody once said to me that the person she bought her goats from said that she should buy whatever mineral the goats would eat. And that sounds like a good idea on the surface, but it's really not. And here's why. Because if you have a really good mineral for your goats, they should not be eating a lot of it. So I'm going to share my screen here so that you can see what we're talking about. This is my mineral comparison chart, and we will put a link to this in the comment section so you can get a copy of this for yourself, and you can take this with you to the store. You see, I recommend Sweetlix Meat Maker and Purina Goat Minerals. And if you can't get those in your area, then you might want to take this list with you and see what you have that comes close to those two. The other four are ones that I specifically do not recommend, and I listed them because they're pretty popular and I get questions about them a lot. And so rather than having to just repeat everything over and over and over again, I created this chart, and we updated it last April, a year ago, because New Country Organics had changed their product. We also added Do More because that was new a little over a year ago. And a lot of people started using that because it's so readily available at Tractor Supply stores. And so we had some changes and additions to make. But anyway, the problem with thinking that, oh, the one your goats eat the most is the best, is that Sweetlix and Purina both tell you on the label, which nobody reads, but it's on the label, it says that they should consume between a half and a quarter ounce a day. So that is not very much. You're probably never going to see them consume that. And the reason they only need to consume that much is because it has so many more minerals in it. So you look at this and you see, for example, some of the really important ones that I am always looking at is copper. So you see Sweetlix has got 1,750 ppm. Purina has 2,500 ppm. These other ones do not have that much. And that's the minimum number. The maximum number is 1,800 and 2,700 with Sweetlix and Purina. And Do More tells you it's 1,200. So that is not good. That's not enough. And so you're more likely to see copper deficiency if you're feeding one of these other minerals because they just don't have nearly as much copper in them. And that is even if you don't have copper antagonists in your well water or your pasture. And we should post a link to that article about copper too, because I don't have time to go into all these minerals individually and talk about why they're important. But copper is one that you see a lot of deficiency on. And then the other one that you see deficiency problems is selenium. And the thing with selenium is, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, my state or area, whatever, is deficient in selenium. Unless you live in the Dakotas or right around there, like if you're in the eastern half of Montana, you're going to be more like the Dakotas than the western side of Montana, because Montana is a huge state. So if you're in the Dakotas or the states right around there, you have plenty of selenium in your soil, maybe even too much. I get emails from people sometimes who say that they had their hay tested and it's really high, and they're wondering if it's safe for their goats because they were told it was not safe for horses. And that gets a little tricky because horses are a lot more sensitive to selenium than goats are. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So back to this chart. So you see that both Sweetlix and Purina have 50 ppm selenium in them. That's really good. ManaPro has 1/4 as much. Okay. So I do not recommend ManaPro for breeding animals. If you have pet wethers, is probably okay. Same thing with the Do More, only 20 ppm. If you have pet wethers, probably okay. But not I would not do that for breeding does and bucks. The big thing with selenium is that you can have, selenium is very important for muscle function. And so the uterus is a giant muscle. So if a goat is deficient in selenium, she could have a wimpy labor. She's more likely to have a retained placenta because the placenta is dependent upon those uterine contractions to cause it to expel in a timely manner. And then kids may be weak at birth. They may have trouble nursing because the tongue, again, another muscle. So selenium is really, really important if you are raising goats. But if you've got pet wethers, then not as much. So if you've got pet wethers and all you can find in your area is the Mana Pro or the Do More, then it's probably okay. But I wouldn't give that to animals that are breeding. Now, some people, one person looked at this and they're like, oh, I'm going to give Redmond because it has 60 ppm selenium. Well, it's not that much more. And the thing is, it's quite low in everything else. And so it probably doesn't make up for it. So it's only got 1,000 ppm copper, which is not great. And also look at the calcium here. It's very low. So I wouldn't give this to goats that are milking because the calcium level is really low. You want to see like 14, 15, 16 percent calcium if you've got goats milking because they need a lot of calcium. You don't want hypocalcemia in your does at the end of pregnancy. Another one that's important is iodine. I like the fact that Sweetlix has 450. So Sweetlix is my first choice, but if you can't find it, Purina is my second choice. And then also zinc is very important. Again, this is another reason Sweetlix is my first choice. 1.2% is 12,000 ppm. So if you ever see zinc expressed as a percentage and you're comparing it to another product, if that other product has ppm, unless it's over 10,000 ppm, the zinc that is 1% or more is more than that because 1% is equal to 10,000 ppm. So this confuses people sometimes because you might see zinc. You're usually going to see zinc in ppms because most of them don't have this much in them. So this is why it is not a good idea to buy the mineral that your goats consume the most, because if you get a mineral that is very low in actual minerals, the goats are going to consume more of it. Will they consume enough? Hopefully, theoretically they should, but I would prefer to just give them the minerals that have higher levels. And the other thing too I want to point out is that these are all loose minerals. I do not recommend blocks at all. And the reason is because if you look at these numbers on blocks, they are even lower. And like, I don't recommend Purina blocks. Make me mad because like I think the selenium in their block is something like 1 or 2 ppm. Like it's insanely low. There's no way that a goat would ever get enough selenium or copper or just about anything from their block because it's so incredibly low. So that is another problem that people have, is that they're like, oh, I buy the block because my goats lick the block all the time, but I never saw them eat the minerals. Well, yeah, if they only need 1/4 ounce to 1/2 ounce a day of the loose mineral, you're not going to see them eating that. But if the block has very, very little mineral, practically nothing, then they're going to be licking it all day long and they're still not going to get enough. So that's why it's really important that you don't just say, oh, well, what are the goats eating the most? Because that's not necessarily going to give you the best answer. So if you've got any questions, post in the comment section below. Thanks, everyone.